Welcome to the A to Z of Wine with Shehnaz as we explore the world of wine in Portugal. In this episode, we are going to dispel one of the biggest wine myths. You may have heard of Mateus Rosé, Portugal's and probably the world's most famous rosé. And you will have seen the Baroque Mateus Palace on the labels of this rosé. But did you know Mateus Rosé is not actually from Mateus Palace? As we take you behind the scenes of the 16th century wine cellars of Mateus Palace, which have been around a lot longer than the palace itself, we will get to taste the still wines which showcase wonderful indigenous Portuguese grape varieties from the vineyards that grow all around the palace. We also explore the beautiful neo-Baroque Mateus Palace Gardens with views of the distant hills and vines. So join me.
In the early 20th century, this house was no longer a family house. The history of the successive generations had transformed and they had created their own paths away from here. We are in a region in the interior of Portugal. It's fantastic how this was thought and built here as a center of this small empire, but by then it was no longer that. And so the family starts to think what to do with it and how to manage it. And it is classified as National Heritage in 1910. Just before the monarchy ends and the Republic starts, it was one of their last gestures to fix the National Heritage in a classified way.
Yes.
And then the family starts thinking, as I said, how to create here what came to be later in the 60s of the 20th century, the Museum of Casa de Mateus.
Okay.
It was a long process, but very matured. And it started with the redesign of these gardens where we are.
It's such a beautiful
We
garden.
have some information on how they were back in the 18th century, but a garden is a living being. It's born, it dies, and so by then it was no longer what it had been.
Yes.
And so the family invites a succession of landscape architects and painters and people to redesign the gardens, which we call neo-Baroque gardens because they are not really from the Baroque period, but always reinventing or trying to reinventing contemporarily in each moment when they did it, how to approach the idea of Baroque garden. This is a classical one with the labyrinths, with the small lake in the center.
Yes.
And it gives, but anyway, we are here in this area of japonicas. How do we call this?
Japonicas, that's what we call them as well.
And it's previous to the reshaping of the garden. So what we can see in the landscape is this succession of layers of time that explain us a little bit about the history of the place.
Oh wow, I've just noticed some vines. Are they the Mateus Palace vines?
Yes, they belong to the foundation. They are extramuros, they are not in the perimeter people can visit, but yes, it's one of the sources of our wines.
Yes.
Mostly for red wines there, it's exposed to the south, and it's
nice bit of sunshine as well.
The lower parterre has some fantastic gardens also. This one was designed by Paulo Benzliman, this Italian painter living in Portugal who was quite acquainted with the family and coming here very often. And it's already a derivation of the original idea of the Baroque garden. One of the secrets here is that you discover something new every step.
Every time you go. So, José Luis, tell me about this wonderful cellar.
This cellar is really magnificent. It's here, it precedes the existence of the house itself, of the Casa de Mateus, which was built in the mid-18th century. And we know that this cellar was already here by the late 16th century. And the family who after built the house was already here and was already dedicated to wine production, which was one of the main activities in Douro already by then. In this movement that made the intensification of the production in wine, exportation to England, and then 100 years later we start talking of port wine. And the history of the region changes, really.
Completely. How old is the cellar? Because a beautiful wooden structure, but these are granite, aren't they?
These are granite, as the whole house. Okay. Yes, it's granite coming from very near here. And yes, it was built before. Some of it was already recovered in the beginning because it was always inhabited. It was producing wine by then, it is producing wine now.
Right now
and
as well.
And so, yes, behind these lagars in granite, you can see the cubas in aluminium for the white wine, etc.
Beautiful mix of traditional as well as modern as a winery. But also, I suppose, a lot of people associate Mateus Rosé and Mateus Palace. But actually, the two are not the same, right? It has the
Mateus Rosé has spread the image of the facade of the house
of the palace
in the whole world. Yes. And so it's like this free publicity for us.
Yes.
And it created this myth of Mateus. It's really a wine that is spread all over. And it was born here, Mateus Rosé, from some experiences in the 1940s with a variety that maybe we'll taste afterwards, and we'll speak a little bit more about it, called Alvarilhão. And it was after that they had this idea to create a lighter wine.
So Alvarilhão is a red grape, isn't it?
And it's a red grape.
Talk about it more in detail
when
we try it.
It's not too dark, but it's a red grape.
It's a bit like a Pinot Noir, quite light.
Yes, I guess so.
Okay. Now you're making me thirsty. I think we need to try some wine.
I'm a bit thirsty also. Happily, we have some of the wines we produce here, or some of them it's produced by enterprises we are connected to.
Okay.
And we have Manuela, who knows a lot about all these wines and can.
Hello.
Hi, Manuela. So what are we going to be trying today?
So first, I would like you to try a wine like it's a straight varietal. The grape is iconic, is behind the history of the famous Mateus Rosé. And it happens that we still have here on this estate the oldest plot of Alvarilhão, and that is the name, very hard. Alvarilhão, very nasal sound, very hard perhaps to pronounce. But then in the 18th century, this grape is amazing because it was already referred as an ancient grape, not only in Portugal, but then also in Spain. Further north as well, in the Vinho Verde region.
Is it linked to Alvarinho then?
Because it is not.
It's not completely different.
It's a reddish, I wouldn't say red, but reddish grape.
Okay. So we're going to start with the rosé. Okay.
With the rosé.
Okay.
With the Alvarilhão.
As I was telling you, in 1942, during the Second World War, producers around were worried because they were selling much less wine. The trades, ways in Europe were blocked, and so they needed to invent something that would be easy to drink and that would spread the publics of wine drinking. And so they invented, and it was the same, usually you were speaking about Alvarinho, it was the same enologist who created the Mateus Rosé after this variety, Alvarinho, and the Casal Garcia.
Casal Garcia as well.
The very famous Casal Garcia.
And all of a sudden they had two of the most
popular wines.
Popular wines around the world.
Bottles sold in Portugal still.
Yes,
but not too late after Sograp, who is until today the producer of Mateus Rosé, found out that Alvarilhão was a variety that was not that regular in production.
So much harder to find.
They could not rely on this variety to keep on. So they changed the recipe, and then this history of some conflict between the house and Sograp started. But let's drink and think about.
It's a beautiful, beautiful color. It's almost a bit orangey, isn't it?
It
Let's have a
is,
closer
yes.
look at the bottle.
Different color.
Yes.
The most rosé wines are.
So, yeah, it's kind of a
It's
rosé orange.
And it's a very gastronomic rosé.
Yes,
but
'cause
then
it's got a bit of texture, really, doesn't it?
it has a very good texture.
Interesting nose as well. So
Yes.
this grape as well, I imagine it oxidizes quite easily. From
Easily,
the nose as well,
yes.
you can sort of smell it's got
So
some
it's
really
the
interesting
ideal,
characters.
yes, for blends of like tawny port wines, because it was very often used for port, like the tawny
Ah, okay.
as well.
Very nice.
It really, what really amazed me is that this rosé, I mean, it's the vintage is 2019,
No,
and I think it
realised
developed,
that.
in my opinion, I
Wow.
don't know,
Yes.
it developed some tertiary flavors,
Yes.
no? Yeah.
It's almost slightly nutty. So
It's a
normally
nutty,
people,
exactly.
people would drink rosés really fresh and young, and most rosés are meant to be drunk fresh and young.
Fresh and
but
young.
some rosés are meant to age, and this is definitely one of them. And you're saying it's from the three regions as well, so from the Baixo Corgo, the Cima Corgo, and the Douro Superior.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so this is it's a flavor of Douro, really. So what do we try next?
So the next.
We'll try a white wine coming
white
exactly
wine.
from the three sub-regions.
Also
it's
from the
called
three.
Three Grapes.
And what are the three grapes,
So the
Manuela?
three grapes are all indigenous to Portugal. The main one that we grow here in Mateus, because we have an excellent terroir for white wines, surrounded by two mountain ranges,
Yes.
Alvão and Marão. So the texture of the soil is basically like clay and shale. This grape, Viuzinho, the main one.
Viuzinho,
Yes.
and?
There are three.
Okay, so
But then Viuzinho, yes, it gives like structure.
Okay.
And then it delivers very like floral flavors as well. But then there's also another grape that we call Gouveio.
Gouveio.
Also called Godelho.
Oh, Godellos. I've heard of
Godelho.
Godello in
Ex-
green Spain.
Exactly.
Oveio.
It's well known for delivering like sea salt flavors. Yes.
Very nice. And the third grape?
Rebigato.
Oh, Rebigato. Okay,
Rebigato
I
is
have read
also
about
a-
this grape before.
So, but then just a small part
Yes.
of the wine was like fermented in French oak barrels with
Okay.
batonnage. So it's
that's
not
kind of
unusual
stirring
to stir. Yes,
to really get the flavors.
all the flavors.
from the sort of
Yes.
the stems as well as the skins.
Yes,
Yes, to really sort of give it more structure.
More structure.
And body as
So-
well. Okay.
So well balanced.
And those are three grapes. I mean, most of us have probably never heard of those because they
Yes.
are indigenous to Portugal,
Portugal.
which makes it very, very special.
People
So-
can find them here in our vineyards because
Yes.
we have this collection of all the varieties of the Douro region.
Amazing.
It can be seen in the different times of the year, and it's a period of
And
growth.
what time of year are we picking these grapes over here?
So we'll start like picking the grapes like earlier now, a little bit earlier, but then third week of August. We start going to the vineyards to control the sugars and all that. But then usually it's like for the third week of August now when we start harvesting.
I see what you mean about the aromatic nose.
Yeah, it's very
It's
aromatic.
Very aromatic, but it's very dry and it's got
Yes.
beautiful acidity on the side of your mouth.
It's nearly bone. It's not off dry. It's actually
it's bone dry.
bone dry.
And what vintage is this? What year was this man made?
So this is a vintage 2022.
22. So still quite fresh.
Still very fresh.
And a wine like this, how long would you keep it for?
I mean, I think it has like good acidity, so I would keep it. We would keep it for another, say, 4 or 5 years.
And I think it's really exciting to try a white wine because most people either associate the Douro Valley with port
With port.
or red wine.
Exactly.
And actually, it makes very good quality white wine.
Yes. So the Douro, it's not like very like homogeneous, and the altitude is important. So we are now growing most of the white grapes highest.
High on the slopes.
Yeah, exactly.
And are they also on terraced vineyards as well?
They can be, but then the higher it means like cooler. So.
Yes.
But then this is the area.
Yes, where it's naturally higher already.
Yes, the best, one of the best areas in the Douro for the production of white wines.
And also the climate change has been playing a role, because we would start the harvest some decades ago in mid-September. Now we are starting in mid-August or
Wow,
3rd.
that's really early.
And this kind of wines also gets one of these days. Yes, they have to be cultivated higher and higher to keep the same characteristics.
That's really interesting, because we were in a vineyard in Simacorgo and they said exactly the same thing, how they're starting to harvest sooner and sooner than they did before. We talked about red wine. I think it's only right if we tried some red wine.
Yeah.
So what are we going to be trying?
And this red wine comes from another project we are linked to. It's called Clube Nosso, our club.
Ah, okay.
Which is a club of wine lovers, directed and oriented by this enologist called José Carlos, who worked here for long and who could develop experiences with different varieties coming from different places in Douro.
Okay.
And this wine we are going to taste comes from the hills closer to the River Douro.
Okay, so it's further down.
An affluent of Douro called Rio Ceira.
Yes.
And
it's a tributary of the Douro. Yes.
In this club, he does some monovarietal
this
wines,
one is
but
not.
then he does this pacto, which means pact, which means pact. And this is a pact between 4 varieties, 3 farms, but Manuel will tell us.
3 vineyards, 3 vineyards. But I mean, this is something that José Carlos did from scratch. It was all, when he started working here, was very experimental, not only in Mateus, but then this Quinta da Costa, that is within the family since, I believe, 17th century.
Okay.
And then, unlike Mateus, we have here very rich soil. The Douro, no, it's a sandy soil, it's rocky, so, and the vines are really, really resilient there. You cannot imagine the depth.
So it must be super dry for the roots have to go right all the way down to really find the water and the nutrients.
So there, I mean, the cleavage of this is like 60%. This vineyard.
So the elevation, so that sort of slope is 60. That's
60.
Very steep. That's almost like the Mosel in Germany, where it's quite extreme as well. So what grapes do we have in this particular red
then
wine?
here we have 4 of the main grape varietals that we also use for port. Touriga Franca, the well-known Touriga Franca, Touriga Nacional, Tinta Roriz, that is also grown in Tempranillo in Spain, and Alicante Bouschet.
Alicante Bouschet, we haven't tried that yet on this trip.
But then what makes this wine special is also the agricultural practices these days. This is nearly organic. I mean,
you've got the weather for it to be organic and biodynamic. It's nice and dry,
So, for instance, it didn't use like commercial yeast. After the grapes were destammed, they arrived here all at the same time. They were
so they pressed at the same time.
They were not pressed. They decided not to do that. So because we have these granite lagars, so why not? I mean, and then the grapes were gently foot trodden. So it's a long process. We don't do that for all wines, but something that is special. If we have very good fruit, so we want to treat it with extra care. Human feet cannot crush the seeds.
Yes, because of course, if you crush the seeds, it adds bitterness to it as well.
So
you want that elegance, really.
More like elegant.
Yes.
So
let's try. So I'm curious to see as well what the color is going to be like. That's really beautiful and
ruby red.
That's a beautiful color.
So.
Now for a completely different thing.
Yes. Oh
so you can give us your feedback about this wine.
It does smell beautiful, doesn't it?
It smells like the soil it came from.
Indeed. but also the fruit. It has
Yes,
so much.
Yes.
Is it the
Yes.
Alicante
Fruit
Boucher
driven.
which gives that
Exactly.
gorgeous aromatics?
Yes,
that
some
maybe the
floral
Touriga
flavors
Nacional.
of the Touriga Franca, especially like the violet flower.
I get the violet that you're saying, the
Yeah.
geranium.
Geranium.
It's smoother. It's really smooth.
Yeah,
It's,
the fact of like using that,
'cause you
not
see the
using
colour.
presses.
Yeah, that's probably it. It's got
Yes.
beautiful acidity.
From the
full of
beginning,
fruit.
yeah, they are more like mellow,
Yes.
not too astringent.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely. And the tannins as well, they're super soft, even though they're
Soft
structure.
tannins, yes,
But
exactly.
it's really easy to drink. I think this is the kind of wine, everyone would enjoy with or without food.
Yeah.
Would you chill this slightly, or do you just serve it at
Well,
whatever
I think,
room temperature is?
18 Celsius is too much, but then between 16, 17, it's perfect.
So you would likely chill it as well.
Yes.
That's lovely. What do you think, José
I
Carlos?
think it's marvelous.
Yeah. So cheers to
Yeah, yeah.
that. Cheers to things just
Cheers.
working. Beautiful red wine. Thank you for joining us on the A to Z of Wine with Shehnaz for a very special wine tasting at Casa de Mateus or Mateus Palace.
Quinta do Seixo is actually a very old historical estate.
That's so delicious. That is such a nice pairing together.